All right, so thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon as we discuss personal statements, particularly identifying what and how to write your essay. We are going to start off by identifying what is the purpose of the personal statement and addressing the various personal essay prompts. So a number of folks might wonder what is the purpose of the personal statement within the context of your entire application. And so the personal statement serves a number of different functions. First and foremost, it is the only opportunity within the primary application system to be able to communicate to the programs who are reviewing your application, particularly why you are motivated to pursue a career in this field. In addition, the essay serves as the only significant writing sample, so you do want to make sure that the essay that you produce and submit is a well-written document. I'm going to share with you the variety of essay prompts from the centralized applications. And so as you can see, the essay prompts vary in terms of prompt as well as length. Most application services have a character limit, which does include spaces. So as we go through the prompts, you're able to see that for the medical schools, the prompts are very similar, but also largely relatively vague. They're asking you to provide an explanation as to why you want to go to medical school or to become a physician. If you are applying to a dual MD, PhD program, in addition to your personal essay, which should focus solely on your interest in going to medical school, you'll have a second essay known as the MD, PhD essay, which focuses on your reason for wishing to pursue the combined MD, PhD degree. So this essay should largely focus on what you hope to achieve through that combined degree, as well as your significant research essay, which is a much longer essay and should describe the significant research experiences that you have been involved in. Most applications have a very similar prompt. So dentistry, physician assistant, both ask, why do you want to pursue a career as a dentist or a physician, respectively? Optometry's prompt, while a little bit longer, is essentially asking the same question. Describe your inspiration for the decision to become an optometrist, but they also ask that you expand on including your preparation for training, your aptitude and motivation, the basis for your interest in optometry, and your future career goals. This is a lot to include in a very short 4,500 character essay. Occupational therapy asks for you to address why you've selected occupational therapy as a career and how the degree relates to your immediate and long-term professional goals. They ask you to further expand on how your personal, educational, and professional background will help you achieve those goals. The OTCAS application personal statement is the longest personal statement at 7,500 characters. The PharmCAS application asks essentially the same question. So why have you selected pharmacy as a career? How the PharmD degree will relate to your immediate and long-term professional goals, and describing your personal, educational, and professional background. However, the character limit for the PharmCAS application is much smaller at 4,500 characters. For those students applying to physical therapy programs, you should note that the PT-CAS personal statement prompt has changed for the 2021 application cycle. The new prompt is as follows. Every person has a story that has led them to a career. Since there are a variety of health professions that help others, please go beyond your initial interaction or experiences with physical therapy and share the deeper story that has confirmed your decision to specifically pursue physical therapy as your career. Lastly, the veterinary application system doesn't really have a personal statement. Instead, there are 3 prompts with varying character limits that ask the applicant to address a number of different questions. The first 2 prompts have a length of 1,500 characters. The first prompt being, there are many career choices within the veterinary profession. What are your future career goals and why? As well as the second prompt, in what ways do veterinarians contribute to society and what do you hope to contribute? The final prompt for the VMCAS application says, considering the breadth of society which veterinarians serve, what attributes do you believe are essential to be successful within the veterinary profession? Of these attributes, which do you possess, and how have you demonstrated these in the past? This prompt has a slightly longer character length of 2,000 characters. It's important to note that regardless of which essay prompt you're responding to, this essay is something that you will want to put some time and consideration into as you begin writing the process. It's good to know that your personal essay should not be completed overnight and submitted on the next day. So we do encourage students to start early in the process with brainstorming, writing, revising, seeking feedback, revising again, and proofreading before they submit. Today's workshop will largely focus on the early parts of brainstorming and writing, with a few tips on how to revise your essay before submission. One of the most common questions that I get from students is, how should I start, or where should I start? Oftentimes, when we write essays for assignments or other reasons, we tend to follow the format of opening up a laptop, opening up a Word document, and just starting to write. Unfortunately, for the personal statement, that often leads to students staring at blank Word documents, unable to identify exactly what to put on the page. My strong suggestion is to start the process by reading the application prompt and understanding what specific questions are being asked of you. Before you open your laptop to start actually putting words to the page, it's important to start doing some brainstorming and thinking about why you have chosen to dedicate your life to this field. What do you hope to accomplish as a part of this professional community? I also encourage students to brainstorm answers to the following questions. What's the first time you thought about a career in healthcare? Can you list all of the significant experiences that you feel had an impact on your decision to pursue your career? And what's the first time you actually questioned if this career was right for you? After spending plenty of time reflecting, brainstorming, and jotting down some notes, then it's time to start making connections. What similar themes or topics emerge from the notes that you wrote down? As you're noting these similar themes or topics, it's then important to start identifying which of those things do you choose to include in your actual essay. Some students find it hard to actually start this process. And so an exercise that I like to use with students is one that we're going to do now. So I'm going to ask everyone to take out a piece of paper and a writing utensil, ideally, if you are a student who prefers to use your laptop, open up a Word document and you can use this digitally as an exercise. I'm going to start a timer. You're going to have 2 minutes, and I'm going to ask that during those 2 minutes, you continue to write or type no matter what. This free writing exercise is an opportunity for you to just put content on the page and get your brain flowing. If you get to the point where you can't think of anything else to write, just write the same word over and over and over again until your brain starts flowing again. So if everyone's ready, I'm going to set my timer for 2 minutes, and I'm going to ask you to think about, why do you want to be a whatever it is you want to do? Physician, dentist, physical therapist, etc. I'm going to start the timer, and I'm going to ask that you continue to write or type until you hear the timer go off. Ready? Let's begin. All right, so time's up. Hopefully that's been an opportunity for you to take some time to really start to think about why you're interested in pursuing this career. For those of you that found this exercise easy, I'm glad. Don't be discouraged if you found this harder than you thought it would be. It's not easy at the first start to really dive deep into why. But if that's a question that you found yourself struggling with, I encourage you to think on that. Reflect. Why do you want to choose this career? What is it about this particular career that is motivating you to pursue an additional degree and to largely spend the rest of your life pursuing additional education and training to be successful? Now that we've moved on from the free writing exercise, we're going to start talking about how to identify what you want to write about in your essay. Once you've done some brainstorming and started to think about, why is it that you're pursuing this career? What significant experiences have helped prepare you? And what's important for you to share with the admissions committee? You're going to want to identify, what's that central message that you're trying to communicate. Hopefully, by spending some time brainstorming, jotting down some notes, and identifying themes or topics that emerge, You can identify what central message you're hoping to communicate. What stories, examples, and reflections will you include within your essay to communicate that central message? It's important to note that for many of you, you're not going to be able to include everything within this essay. So take into context what pieces of information are already being shared as a part of your application. For example, all of the application systems have an experiences section that asks you to share information about experiences outside of the classroom that you have participated in that will demonstrate skills or other aspects of your personality that are preparing you to be successful in a graduate program and as a professional in this field. So don't feel the need to regurgitate all of that information within your personal essay. You might choose select examples or stories from a particular experience, but this is not the opportunity to turn your resume into a narrated version. In addition, you might think that your essay is short. For some of you, it's going to be shorter than others. And so remembering that you need to be concise and pick the most impactful pieces to share as a part of your personal statement. There will also be opportunities to share additional information through secondary essay questions and your interview. So not every piece of information that you want the admissions committee to consider has to be included in this primary application. So start to think strategically about what needs more context, what would be easier for you to discuss in person, versus what can you write about concisely and include in your personal statement. These are the types of things that you'll want to include to help communicate that central message. For some of you, you may have some red flags that you want to address within your personal statement. Red flags are components of your application that will cause concern for the admissions committee as to whether they should consider you for an invitation at admission into their class. It's important to know what is and is not a red flag. For example, a lower than average entrance exam score is not a red flag. Similarly, a lower than average GPA is not a red flag. However, possible red flags could include things like negative grade trends. Perhaps you had multiple semesters, hopefully earlier in your academic career than recent, where you were not as successful, but you've been able to bounce back. And those negative grade trends might pull your GPA down. That's different than being a consistent applicant, but just having a lower than average GPA. In addition, a particularly bad semester, likely one that has been impacted by extraneous circumstances, may be something that you want to address as a red flag in your application. If you had a particularly low undergraduate GPA and you are participating in a post-bac or master's program to help demonstrate your academic performance, that might be something that you would want to address as a red flag within your personal statement. In addition, serious violations such as arrests, academic misconduct, or student conduct violations may be considered red flags, and you may want to address this within your application. Many applications provide an opportunity to address these instances separately. However, if this has been an issue that you feel like is significant and you didn't have an opportunity to address it sufficiently within those sections, or if it had an impact on your academic or extracurricular participation, you may want to expand upon that as a part of your personal statement. It's important to know that while red flags should be addressed, they should not be your personal statement. It's important to make sure that your personal statement still addresses the primary goal of the prompt, which is largely to communicate why you are interested in pursuing this particular professional career and what your motivation is. That being said, you should make sure that your red flag essays are concise, don't detract from the overall feel of your personal statement, and are not peppered with excuse making. It's important to succinctly identify the red flag, provide any sort of appropriate explanation, discuss how you've moved forward and grown as a part of that situation, and then move on. I also want to say that you shouldn't raise any issues in your essay that you wouldn't want to explain in an interview. For example, some individuals may have had traumatic experiences that have impacted their application that they would like to discuss as a part of their personal essay. Keep in mind that anything that you discuss in your personal essay is fair game for interviewers to bring up during your interview. So if you have a particular experience that might cause you to feel uncomfortable or could cause you to cry during your interview, don't share that information as a part of your personal essay. Only provide the level of detail that you would be comfortable discussing in person. As I mentioned before, a personal essay is an opportunity for you to demonstrate your writing proficiency. So it's important to go back to the basics and think about how do you write an essay. Introductions should be the component of your essay that immediately grabs your reader's attention. It should also be a component that ties the larger themes or message that you're trying to communicate into the beginning of your essay. Throughout the body of your essay, you're going to expand on that centralized message. Here's where you want to be selective about what you include. Always ask yourself whether the information that you're including in the body of your essay connects with the overall message you're trying to convey. In addition, you should have a conclusion at the end of your essay. This is a great place to articulate your future goals and sum up the message that you are trying to communicate. As we move forward in today's workshop, we're going to discuss what are some opportunities and ways to do this succinctly. However, before we get there, it's important to make sure that the content that you are communicating is sufficiently reflected upon and not just addressing surface level issues. Think back to the questions that we discussed at the beginning. Why is this a career that you are going to dedicate the rest of your life to? What about these experiences have been significant that have prepared you or helped you confirm that this is the correct field for you? As you think about those experiences, it's important to make sure that you're employing critical reflection. Largely, if you look at what you've jotted down, you will have identified the what. What happened? What did you learn? What did you do? What did you expect and what was different from what you expected? And what was your reaction? This is the surface level, and so it's important that your essay goes deeper than this to really communicate to the admissions committee that you have put the proper amount of thought and reflection into this decision. At this point, this is where I ask students to start the reflection by saying, so what? Why does any of this matter? What are the consequences and meanings of those experiences? How do those experiences link to your academic, professional, and personal development? And specifically, how does that link to your motivation to pursue this career. This will help you to identify the importance and take your experiences and stories to the next level. But that's not far enough. It's not only important to know why does this matter, but what's going to be different now? So the next step, once you've identified why does this matter, is to start thinking about now what? What are you going to do, or what have you already done as a result of those experiences? What have or will you do differently? And how have or will you apply those things to what you've learned? Specifically making these connections in terms of how you will apply what you have learned to your professional goals is extremely important. This demonstrates a level of maturity and critical reflection that admissions committees are seeking when selecting which applicants to invite for interviews. This process is incredibly important, and I encourage everyone to take the time to do this and write it down. Having those words on the page will help provide you some language as you start to put together the pieces of your personal statement. The next area that I want to talk about is the idea of showing versus telling. Simply telling the reader about your motivations, characteristics, or experiences is not sufficient. Admissions committees want to see examples. They want evidence. Remember, the folks who are evaluating your application are by and large scientists. They need that evidence to understand that you are truly capable of the things that you are claiming. Showing also helps the reader elicit their senses, things like sight, hearing, touch, taste, and smell. Encourages them to keep reading and creates a memorable essay. Let's take a look at a difference in terms of telling versus showing. This early paragraph is included in an applicant's essay to medical school. I volunteered at a hospice care center, providing companionship and comfort to patients who were nearing death. I developed compassion and learned the importance of patient-focused care. While this sounds great, the writer is not providing any sort of evidence for the claims that they are making. They're simply telling the reader what they did and what skills they have. A much more convincing version of this essay is revised for showing. The first day I came into Ruth's room, she motioned for me to sit down next to her. Within an hour, our conversation had turned from the books she was reading to how her husband had died, followed by her son, and then her granddaughter. I was astounded. She told me she tried not to think about it too often, but it tended to come to her mind when the weather was gloomy. Ruth typified what I have seen in many hospice patients: vulnerability, frankness, and often resilience. They leave me wanting to do everything I can to ease their burdens. This is a much clearer explanation and demonstration of compassion, patient-focused care, and being able to provide companionship and comfort. Keep in mind that this is also a really good example of writing about another person while including your own point of view. While it's very common to write about others, whether it be from experiences or trying to communicate particular things through your central message, it's important to remember that the personal statement should always be about you and should be written from your point of view. I mentioned this earlier, but it's also important to remember that you want to make sure you're reaching your audience. Admissions committee members are reading hundreds, if not thousands, of essays and have to be able to identify the ones that stand out to select for interviews. Strong personal statements make memorable connections with their readers. There are a few things that you can do to ensure that you're reaching your audience. First and foremost, you need a memorable opening. Your opening can't be boring. It should grab the reader's attention and make them want to read more, not stop. In reading a pile of 100 essays, the worst thing is reading an opening that's boring because I've automatically shut off my interest in reading anything else. So if you can grab your reader's attention from the beginning, that will be pivotal in making sure that they are continuing to read the rest of your essay with interest. Second, you want to make a connection with your reader. So your essay should elicit emotions. Help them see what you see and feel what you feel. It's important for them to understand your passion for this field as a component of your essay. If you are not making that emotional connection, you're not effectively communicating your passion. Finally, you want to focus on the impact. Making sure that you're writing about the impact of the experience on you as a person and you as a future physician or dentist or PA or pharmacist is incredibly important. Everything that you write about should tie back to the main message of why you're interested in following this career. There are a number of things that you should avoid as you're moving forward in the writing and revising process. Here's a list of things that are commonly included in personal essays that are big no-nos. The first one is cliches. These can be a number of different things, but it's important to remember that if your readers think that your essay is cliche or kitschy, that's not impressive. Second, laundry list of experiences. This is the opportunity for you to delve deeper and write more specifically about your motivation and passion. Your experiences list has already been addressed elsewhere in the application and shouldn't be regurgitated here. I do want to clarify that that doesn't mean that if you've included an experience in your application elsewhere, that you shouldn't be discussing it in your application. The difference is this: the experiences section of your application is designed to provide a broad overview and description of the experience that you participated in. The personal essay should be much more narrow. So if we go back to the previous example of showing and telling, the writer discussed a particular instance of volunteering at a hospice clinic. That writer had also included the hospice clinic as an experience in their experiences section, but chose to select a very particular engagement with one patient to demonstrate a set of skills or competencies that they wanted the admissions committee to be aware of. This is the appropriate way to include experiences in your application. The more depth and explanation you can provide to a small experience means that you're not going to be able to include a large number of experiences within your essay. The next issue is quoting famous people. It may seem like a great idea to start your personal essay with a famous quote, but keep in mind, the reader wants to learn more about you. So quoting famous people isn't telling them anything about you. Your essay should be in your own voice. Don't waste precious space on someone else's language. Another obvious thing to avoid is the elements of helping others and loving science. While those things are largely important and probably have had an impact on your decision to pursue a career in a healthcare field, they're both going to be components of any person who's pursuing a career in this field. If you're not interested in helping others, you don't belong in healthcare. And by and large, if you don't like science, you probably aren't going to be successful in a science-heavy graduate program. You have to go beyond these obvious elements and dive into the more specific reasons behind the preferred career that you've selected. Next, we'll move into some issues that address ways that applicants can come across as egotistical. Confidence is important. One thing that's often hard to do within the personal statement is to write about yourself because we've largely been told talking about ourselves too much is being cocky. While that may be true, it's important to write your essay confidently, but not cross that line. Writing about things like medical epiphanies or the idea that you were born or somehow called to a particular career is not in your best interest. That displays a level of egotism that application committees are looking to eliminate from their incoming classes. In addition, statements of grandiosity along the lines of "I'm special" or "I will cure cancer" or "I was born to cure a particular disease" are overinflated senses of the ego. It's one thing to say that you have been impacted by cancer and want to work to create treatments or protocols that will help eliminate cancer. It's another thing to say that you are special and you are God's gift to cancer and you're going to be the one to cure it. We've already slightly addressed the next one, but I do want to point out that negativity and excuse making are never important in your essay. While you may find that this comes up as you are addressing red flags, make sure that you're being objective about identifying the issue, communicating the context, and talking about how you've moved on. Making excuses or simply being negative within the personal statement doesn't communicate the level of maturity that individuals on the admissions committee are looking for. I also encourage students to stay away from controversial topics. Things like abortion, assisted suicide, or other heavily controversial issues are not the place to discuss in your personal statement. If you have particular views on these types of topics, those are best left for the interview where context can be explained. You also want to stay away from extraneous details. By and large, all of your essays are going to be somewhere between a page to a page and a half, single-spaced. You don't have the space to include details that aren't important to your story. As you go through and revise your essay, if you feel like you're including too much or you're not able to meet the character limit, start to identify details that don't take away from the meaning of the experiences or stories you're trying to share. For example, there's no need to include details of names of hospitals that you've worked at, physicians that you've worked under, cities that you've lived in, if those are not relevant to your story. You also want to stay away from discussing bad experiences that you've had with the profession. Everyone has, by and large, had some sort of negative experience with the healthcare profession or knows someone who has. This is not the opportunity to share how that bad experience has impacted you. Remember, you are largely writing to members of professionals who are in this profession, and you have to make sure that what you're communicating is not going to inadvertently offend them. Along the same lines, you want to stay away from examining the profession. It's very easy to take a look at the healthcare system and see all of the flaws and all of the things that could be changed. However, again, you are an untrained, aspiring professional. The individuals who are reading your essays have largely been through not only advanced education and training, but have been practicing within the profession for years or decades. You will come across as a cocky asshole if you come to your essay and simply examine the profession for all of its flaws. As we move through into the revision of your essay, you want to make sure that you're thinking about being yourself within the context of your essay. This is not an opportunity to try and write in a way that's not comfortable for you. Your personal statement's content and style should reflect you. They are trying to learn more about you as an individual and potential professional in this career. It's also always a good writing suggestion to make sure you're using active voice and strong action verbs. Also, be concise. Go back to how you learned how to write about science. Put the thesaurus away. This is not an opportunity for you to write lengthy, poetry-filled essays. You have to get a lot of information across, and the only way to do that is to be concise. Make sure that you're only choosing the elements that are most impactful. If you try to cover too much, you're not going to be able to cover those elements deeply enough to make a connection to your reader. It's always more important to have quality elements in your essay than quantity. You also want to make sure to vary your sentence structure. Don't always begin sentences with the word I. This may be something where, as you're going back and reviewing your own essay, you circle every sentence where you started with the word I. It's very easy to do as we learn to write about ourselves, to write from the first person I. But there are also ways to vary your sentence structure so that you're not always writing in the same sentence format. Finally, proper grammar, capitalization, punctuation, and spelling should be a no-brainer. This is a formal essay to a graduate program. So making sure that you're utilizing proper grammar, capitalizing and punctuating as is standard, and not including spelling mistakes or other typos which indicate that you are not a detail-oriented person. In order to catch those things, proofread. Print a copy of your essay and read it slowly. Have someone else read it. Then proofread it again. I can't tell you the number of times that I've had students tell me, I submitted my essay and then realized that I made a big mistake and I can't fix it. Make sure that you are proofreading multiple times before you submit your essay. Before we move on to the end of our session, and I give you some final tips, I want to stop and see if anyone has any questions. Feel free to use the chat section in your Zoom, which you can access from the toolbar, to share any questions with me that you might want me to address before we close our workshop today. All right, let's move on and identify some of the last minute tips that I have as you're writing your personal statement. Make sure that you're telling your story. This essay is your story, not someone else's. And for two reasons, you should focus on that. First, it's important that this is your essay and not something that you're making up. Because as you go into your interview, interviewers will often ask questions from your personal essay. If you're lying or embellishing, this is an opportunity where you're going to get caught. Second, make sure that you're writing about yourself. I mentioned this earlier. It's very easy as we write about experiences for other people to write in the third person solely and only describe those experiences from that third person perspective. It's important that you're interjecting your own personal view into these experiences because your personal statement is personal and should be about you. Next, remember to show your readers rather than just telling them. Provide specific examples that can demonstrate evidence to the claims that you're trying to make. Don't simply regurgitate your experiences, accomplishments, or other parts of your application. This is not an opportunity to discuss your MCAT score, GPA, other information that is already present in your application unless you feel like it is a red flag that needs to be quickly addressed and moved on. It's important to know that you will write multiple drafts. All good writing requires revision, so give yourself plenty of time to organize your thoughts, write, revise, receive feedback, and edit as necessary. This is a time-consuming process, and you should anticipate spending several weeks drafting your personal essay. Make sure that you're explaining a defining moment that helped steer you towards a career in this field. Consider using that moment as the focal point of your essay. Be original and thoughtful. Discuss how you would contribute to the profession, to patient care, all of which will help you stand out from other applicants. Make sure that you're being yourself. Don't use jargon, cliches, or big phrases that you wouldn't normally use in daily conversation. Remember, schools want to know about the real you. Be colorful, positive, imaginative, and personal when you're discussing why you're a good candidate for this career. Ask yourself, in a pile of 100 applications, would I enjoy reading my statement? If not, it's time to go back to the drawing board and revise. Make sure that you're conveying your passion for your field in your statement. Always recruit feedback. Ask a faculty mentor, advisor, healthcare professional, or other individual to read your essay and provide constructive criticism. Ask them to think about whether the essay is a good representation of your character, what they know of your ideals and aspirations, whether it communicates your central message, and whether it makes a connection. Also, take it to the Writing Center for feedback at least twice. Finally, proofread, proofread, proofread. I cannot overemphasize how important proofreading is to writing your personal essay. I hope that this afternoon's workshop has been helpful in helping you identify what and how to write your personal essay for your application. If you need assistance with your personal statement, please feel free to schedule an appointment. If you are a science student or honors student in any major, you can schedule an appointment with the PREP's office through SSC Campus in one.iu. If you are not a science student, you should schedule a personal statement session with the Health and Life Sciences Advising Center. Their scheduling information can be found on their website, hls.iupui.edu. Good luck with writing and revising your essay, and good luck with the application system to come.